I'm Riley,
And I'm Ronnie,
and this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Plan to Eat podcast. Today, our interview is with Christina Gibson. She is the Director of Growth at CreateMyCookbook. She's worked with CreateMyCookbook since 2018, and she manages the activities that ensure their customers are able to preserve their family recipes and memories.
Our conversation with Christina today centered a lot about the importance of preserving recipes, how to use their program to do it, and we bonded over some Southern traditions and had a great conversation about our love of recipes. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Hi, Christina. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. We appreciate you being here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we just want to jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
I work at Create My Cookbook. I've been with the company for about 5 years. I'm the director of growth. And at Create My Cookbook, we help families turn their family recipes into the well-deserved cookbooks that they should be. So, basically, think photo books, but for recipes. So you've got, all your family recipes, and we're going to get those into a cookbook for you.
So how does that work exactly? So people have their grandma's cookbooks or, handwritten recipes, and then they put them into your program and you guys create a cookbook for them. What's that process look like?
Right. So most of the time, people are starting with the recipe box, and this usually is inherited from grandma, not always. And we have a service where they can take pictures of the recipe cards. We type those up the front and back. And then we have an online designer that they use to create a family cookbook. But there are many ways to get recipes from, some families don't have a recipe box and they just have them from memory. So, having to ask, mom and dad and aunts and uncles for recipes. So we have a function for that as well. And some people have recipes in a Google Doc, wherever your recipes are. That's not a problem. It's getting them into your online recipe box with us and then designing your cookbook, which is, laying out onto the pages and adding photos. Not every cookbook has food photos, excuse me. Most of them have photos of family, so they'll include some pictures of grandma and the nieces and nephews and things like that. So as far from the most simplest of terms, though, if you have family recipes, you can create a book. If you want to add photos and stories, then we can help you do that as well.
That's really neat. It feels like something, because I'm thinking about when I printed my wedding album. I printed one for myself and I printed one for my mom and I printed one for my mother-in-law because I just thought that they would like them. And so I think that this feels like a similar process. It's you get to make it and then you can print as many as you want, right?
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
can print as many as you want. You can make different variations. What we often see is you'll make your first book and it's the family heirloom piece. And they'll print a copy for everyone in the family. We also see people go in and make variations. So when someone gets married, they will kind of pick a handful of recipes to kind of as a wedding gift. Or, for me, I have the Gibson side, which is my husband's side. I have a cookbook for them. And then I have the Rileys, which is my side of the family. And I have recipes from them. And then eventually one day I'll make one for my daughter, which will include both recipes. So once you get the recipes in the recipe box, you can do lots of different things, just depending on who you're gifting to.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah, I love that. We wanted to have you on the podcast because we also love the idea of preserving recipes, preserving family recipes, and just the memories that those things hold. So can you talk to us a little bit about what it means to your customers to be able to preserve these recipes in the cookbooks?
Absolutely. So when we think of a recipe, at the simplest of terms, a recipe is just a list of ingredients, and how to prepare that recipe. But for families, and when we talk about family recipes, it's really so much more. A family recipe, the really core of it is the story behind it, the person who created that recipe, why we eat this recipe, when we eat it, and how we celebrate it. And so for these families, when they're creating a family cookbook, they're kind of reliving a lot of memories in the kitchen. And they're often reliving memories with mom or grandma. And so it's a very emotional process for many of our customers. And so, and we love it when it's celebrating the life of grandma, but it often can be done to celebrate and memorialize grandma. We see that as well. But yeah, so it can be, great. It's great to have the recipe, but really, creating the book is more about the memories in the kitchen.
Mm.
It feels like a bit of a healing process maybe for some of your customers.
It really is. It really is.
Mhm,
We have, I've seen this time and time again where grandma has passed and someone has inherited the recipe box, and then they go to create a family cookbook. And, you know, for them, they're getting that one more chance to sit with grandma. They're inputting
mm.
those recipes, they're thinking about those times, they're talking about the time that grandma made this cake or that pie or how, oh gosh, how they loved it. And then what's really great, we take it a step further. Not only are they getting to relive that, they're actually getting to keep that alive for the next generation. So now grandma's not gonna make the pecan pie, but I am. And it's gonna become part of my story, and my story is going to be to teach my daughter that, like, my grandmother made this pecan pie for Thanksgiving. We now make the pecan pie. So we're keeping, not only the memories, but we're kind of keeping the legacy of those family members alive. And
mhm.
so it's a really beautiful process.
Right. Yeah, it makes me just think about my own grandma. My own grandma is an amazing cook and baker. She somehow knows how to do it all. And I can just think, well, there are so many times when, like I'm texting my mom or I'm texting my aunt being like, hey, send me grandma's recipe for, those pancakes or for whatever. And it would be so much easier if they were just in a cookbook already. I need to get on this and just ask my grandma for her recipes and make them into a cookbook.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, it's a funny story. Today is actually my birthday.
Happy
And I was
birthday.
Thank
What?
you. It is. So I was born on Thanksgiving Day. And so it's like, it changes every year.
Right.
But my birthday cake is pecan pie. Like every year I get pecan pie for my birthday. And it is now like a funny running tradition. My grandmother, she passed a few years ago, but she's like she was a seamstress and she would bake and she did all these funny things. And every year she made, and I always was a little bit of a brat about it as a kid. We had the Thanksgiving pecan pie and then we had my birthday cake pecan pie. So I always insisted that she made two. And so every year, I'd be like, this is my, we would put candles in it and everything. It was my pecan pie. And to this day, like my husband will now make my grandmother's recipe pecan pie on my birthday. And so it's just like for me, I have that recipe now. It's easy access for him, and it's a way for us to celebrate and kind of have fun with that, and share it with my daughter because she never got to meet her. And so it's like tonight, like we're gonna have pecan pie, and we're gonna talk about grandmother.
That's awesome. As somebody who also has a birthday near holidays,
Mhm.
um, you have to kind of fight for your right, you know?
You do,
I'm
you
just I'm just
do.
playing, but you get to own your second pecan pie because,
Absolutely.
birthdays around holidays get lumped together.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm just playing. I probably shouldn't say that as a 32-year-old woman, but I still want my own cake too, so
Yeah, you have
I'm
to
with
have your
you.
own pecan pie. Like, I'm not sharing
Yeah,
it. Like, you can go have the Thanksgiving pie, but this is mine.
totally. That's awesome. I love that story, and it really just connects. I'm thinking about my grandmother and things she's made me for my birthday because mine's close to holidays too, and
Mhm,
there's this special aspect of having a birthday close to a holiday because you get to spend it with your family.
mhm,
Um, there's obviously some downsides of, lumping them all together, but but it is special because forever and ever, my grandmother also would make this chocolate pound cake, and it was amazing. Chocolate pound cake, chocolate frosting, it's the
mm.
best. It can't be reproduced though, because, well, 1, I live at a high altitude and it just is not the same,
Right.
but 2, it never tastes as good as when she made it. I think some of that was just like that heart memory of just like the way that her making it was so special, you know? So I
Absolutely.
love that story that you have that's so similar to mine.
I agree. And it's so crazy and a joke, but it is interesting how I think things taste different in different environments. And I have a joke. I'm like, it's the water. Like when you bake, I'm like, it's that, like we have that good southern water. But it is something about that person making it, and you try to get as close as you can, but it's never exactly grandma, but, we can get really close.
I mean, baking is supposedly the science and everything has to be like perfectly measured, but I don't care. I can't make it the same way she made it,
Yes.
even
It's
if I
also
measured
like
it. Yeah.
when you make it yourself, like, you to do all that work, but when grandma did it for you, you're just getting to enjoy the fruits of her labor.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it tastes better when somebody else makes it. But I'm
If
not I'm not a baker. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Have your husband make it and see how you like
There you
it.
go.
It's a great idea.
So are you a Thanksgiving baby or a, Christmas baby?
Well, my birthday is in a little less than a week, so, Thanksgiving.
Ah,
So, I mean,
Thanksgiving.
I wasn't gonna
That's
say
pretty
that because
yeah,
I didn't wanna take away from your birthday at all.
that's okay. You can have some of my pecan pie.
Thank you. Oh, that's sweet.
So when we talked to you before, one of the things that I really loved that you brought up was the idea of, not only preserving recipes and memories, preserving recipes for preserving their memories. We also just talked about actually physically preserving memories, right? Because grandma's handwriting eventually, like those pen strokes are going to disappear on the paper, or like potentially something terrible is going to happen and you're going to lose your recipes. Um, you mentioned talking about like Hurricane Katrina and your own family's experience with that. I really love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when it comes to creating these books, it's so important. Often if we don't have grandma who's written it down, if she passes and that recipe, that memory, that tradition is gone. But let's just say, even if it is written down, you're still kind of at a risk and have been from the Gulf Coast and the child of Katrina. We all just witnessed and we lost so much. And we often lost the paper that grandma's handwriting had written all these, recipes and the photos and things like that. And so for me personally, it's a big passion of making sure that we have these things documented, making sure, I love when families include photos of the recipe card. So you'll have the top of the page has, it typed up beautifully, and the bottom is the photo of grandma's handwriting, and it's her card, and it's digitally preserved. We print books, also having it digitally preserved is so important because unfortunately we do live in a world where there are hurricanes and forest fires and house fires. And once you lose those things, they're gone. And it's really hard to get them back. Um, and yes, when I was in middle school, we had Katrina, and there was a good bit of loss there. Interesting enough, my parents now live in Texas, and they moved there, retired, and my mom had a bunch of photos and recipes. And then Harvey hit, and they
Mm,
lost. Had flooding, and all those things were lost, and it was really hard. Luckily, we did have our recipes preserved. We had most of the photos backed up, but we did lose quite a few that you don't get those back. And
mhm,
that's hard, and it's sad, and so you want all families to kinda have that, and we kinda have, our CEO, Brian, he's always saying, he's like, "I really don't care how people preserve their family recipes, whether they use us, don't use us. It's just so important that they do."
mhm.
Because we see, it from a historical standpoint, from a family standpoint, it's just so important.
Mhm. I'm not a super nostalgic person, but there's 2 things that I'm very nostalgic about, and it's photos and recipes.
Mhm.
And so, like, when I think about that kind of experience or that kind of tragedy happening, it's like, those are the things I'm gonna go and grab if I even can, because sometimes you don't have an opportunity for that. And so I love that it's a program that really allows for that and allows for family photos to be included and recipe card photos to be included. At Plenty, we love digitally preserving people's recipes for the same reason, just because
Right.
it's a digital copy. And so if something ever were to happen, they can go back and print another cookbook out of Create My Cookbook. They could have them digitally saved somewhere else. Like just doing that so that those things are not lost, so that you can pass them down. That's a
Right.
really special thing that we get to do for people.
That is really special, and I love that you guys are we share that mission, we share
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
understanding of the importance for people, and people don't realize how important that is until it happens to them, unfortunately, till they're the ones who do we all live in that mindset of, "That could never happen to me," and then when it does, then you realize, and, it's gone. Like there's nothing you can
Mhm.
do, but then you realize exactly how important it is.
Mm.
Yeah.
So on the Create My Cookbook website, you guys have a great blog that has lots of different recipes on it. Who's the person who writes all these recipes for you guys?
So these recipes are submitted by our users. They are true community recipes. We ask people, if they don't have to, but of course, if they want to share one of their family recipes, we will post it to the blog, and it's great. Um, what I love about this is these are recipes that aren't created in some fancy kitchen. These are recipes created with love in a kitchen with grandma or with mom. And, they're real. They're real family recipes. They're not perfect. They're not, they don't, it is a true, it's like a window into someone's life. It's a window into their kitchen when you get to see these. And that's what I love about them. I've actually created quite a few of them. I think they're wonderful and they're great. But it's also really fun to create a recipe from one of our users and get to see like how things are differently done in other families. So I really do love our the recipes on our blog.
The holidays really highlight the differences in the way that people make things differently, I think, especially, if you're married or if you are you have a close family that you have Thanksgiving with, some kind of relationship where you're having Thanksgiving or Christmas or another holiday meal with another group of people because what they want to have is not what you want to have. So I'm from the South just like you are. My husband is not, and we just got back from Thanksgiving with his family, and they like pick on me for the things that I want to have at Thanksgiving, or they make fun of it, or think it's weird, and I think the same thing about what they have. I don't know what that is or why you're eating it. And so
It's
it's
so
fun. I love that though because you grow up in this family and you think that this is the right way, quote unquote, right way to do a holiday or do a recipe. Um, but it's not necessarily the right way. There's other recipes that are just as delicious. It's just not the way you grew up doing it.
It is interesting when you get married. So, my husband and I were high school sweethearts, but we're from Mobile County and like on the Gulf. But I grew up a little further north than his family, and so I remember going to his first Thanksgiving, and I thought turkey, like that's what you have at Thanksgiving is turkey. No, not in Balabatry, Alabama. Balabatry, Alabama, you have gumbo. That is what you have on Thanksgiving. And so I got there and I was like, I'll get you a bowl of gumbo. And I was like, what? And I
That's
do
too
like
funny.
gumbo, but I just don't think of it as Thanksgiving. So for your husband, did he have stuffing or dressing?
Stuffing.
Oh, what is wrong with them?
I know it's dressing. What are you
It's
about, Ronnie?
dressing.
Okay,
We
you
have
are
stuffing. We have stuffing.
yeah.
I'm the odd person out over here because I grew up in Colorado. We have stuffing. Is there a difference between
Yeah.
stuffing and dressing as far as how you make
Yes,
them?
Yeah.
stuffing's like dry pieces of bread.
Well,
Yeah. Dress.
stuffing is like actually stuffed inside of the turkey.
Right.
Is
Yep.
dressing made outside of the
It's made
turkey?
outside of a turkey. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
interesting. I've
Yeah, it's
never
a
had
whole
it. I don't
separate
think I've ever
dish.
had it that way because we always just take it out of the turkey and eat it that
I'll
way.
make it for you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's also made, I think stuffing is made from like white bread. We make dressing from cornbread.
Yeah.
Like, you make a
Okay.
pan of cornbread and then at least
Yeah.
my family, we let it dry out overnight and then we break it up and then we make the dressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people have stuffing. I didn't even know that was a thing until a few years ago. I was like, "What are these people entering stuffing?" And
Okay,
that's a
well, I
thing.
was today years old when I learned that stuffing and dressing are different, so don't feel bad.
Great.
Oh, it's too funny.
Oh,
This is so fun though to me because I mean, you can kind of make, I got picked on at Thanksgiving, so it's fine. Cause I'm a cranberry sauce out of the can kind of person and not a cranberry relish person. What about you?
I have
Oh,
no idea what cranberry relish is, if I'm
Okay, this is
honest.
what
well, wait, is cranberry relish the one that's like a little more chunky and it's not the like gel? Because I like the gel out of the can.
Me
it's
too.
exciting.
Yeah, like, I
At
want
least
it to,
that's what we
like,
grew up
tickle.
eating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cranberry relish, I just made it with my mother-in-law, is cranberries and sugar and orange zest or orange rind, maybe a whole orange. I think we put in whole chunks of orange and you pulse it together like with a food processor.
Oh.
And it's like a fruity, chunky, fruity salad thing.
Mhm.
It's a relish. It's
Yeah.
essentially it's relish, cranberry relish. The same texture as like pickle relish.
Oh, interesting.
but it's cranberries
Uh,
and oranges and sugar. And so yeah, so my husband's family does cranberry relish. I do cranberry sauce out of the can, and all of its gelatinous glory.
we have, I love that you just said gelatinous because there were the Jello. Do you know how many recipes we have with Jello? It is like, when I first started, I was like, "Oh, I had no idea." And you see it all the time. We just for fun one day, we were running numbers on because we have like over 5 million recipes have been entered. And so we're like, okay, like what are the most common? And some of the funny things that came out of that study were the most common author name for a recipe is mom. And not like the name, not no, just mom. That's what people enter, mom. And then we had like over 50,000 recipes with the ingredient Jello. And I was like, wow, who knew there was so many uses for Jello?
That's so fun.
Well,
That's
see,
Yes.
funny.
that seems like a very Midwest thing to me, right? Like Midwest families that have all of their different Jello fruit salad things that they eat for different holiday occasions. We have a couple of those in my family because my family grew up in Kansas, but um,
Wow.
I have friends who are like, "Oh, you don't not have the Jello salad when you have
And
Thanksgiving."
what? That's crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
I've actually never tried it, so I can't. Again, it's one of those things when you haven't tried it, you can't judge. But
Yeah.
I mean, I also really like. I live off grits, and you're shocked when people don't know what a grit is. I'm like, "Do you guys want some grits for breakfast?" And they're like, "What?" Like, "Oh, it's delicious. We have it every day."
And okay, see, I live in Colorado now. I'm not living in the South. And these kinds of little surprises to me are so I love connecting with you over this because yeah, I have to explain what grits are and I don't really feel like they're explainable. Um,
Oh, but they're
but
so
it's
good.
fun. It's funny.
It is fun. The only thing that drives me crazy about grits is if you go to a fancy restaurant, it's like Southern cuisine, and they charge $20 for a plate of grits, and I'm like, "No, this is poor people's food. You need to like, why are we charging $20 for a plate of grits? This is crazy." But yes, like everyone should try grits. If you haven't tried grits and you don't want the instant ones, just they're not hard to make. Just get regular grits, add some butter, add some cheese. You can add whatever you want. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're really a blank slate for a lot of things.
They really are,
Yeah.
and they're so tasty.
okay, but so do you guys like your grits a little more firm, gelatiny, or do you like your grits runny?
I
Ooh,
personally like mine runny.
I think it depends on, like, how what we're eating them with. So, like, oh, that's hard because if you put egg like, if you're doing, like, runny eggs and it's too runny, then it just turns into soup.
Mm,
But if we're eating it like my husband will make them and we'll eat them with fish, you want them a little more, a little more runny.
yeah. So I, previous to working for Plantee, I worked for a Cajun Creole restaurant here for 7 years and had to explain grits to people a lot. And I also got a lot of people who are from the South who would be like, I can't believe that you guys let people put sugar or maple syrup in their grits. Like that should not be allowed.
No.
Savory grits only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grits aren't meant to be sweet.
Yeah. But
No.
I think a lot of people, maybe like if I can consider myself a Westerner or whatever, we're used to eating like a sweet oatmeal or something. You like oatmeal with like raisins and like brown sugar or something like that. I think that a lot of people who are not experienced have not experienced like Southern grits. They just think, oh, I'll just make it like I made my oatmeal.
Oh,
Now,
I've never thought about that.
If you're Riley also eats her oatmeal as a savory dish.
Savory.
Oh, that's funny. No, I no, that's where we differ because I need like mine turns into a dessert bowl. And like it's not even a hearty breakfast by the time I'm added all my toppings and my sugar and it's dessert for breakfast.
Well, let me explain. So the same reason that people would not know why or like what grits are or how you should have them, like should they be sweet? Are they savory? When I didn't eat grits growing up ever. I'm sorry. So sorry. I did not eat oatmeal growing up ever. So because my husband's a big fan, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this oatmeal thing a try. I just made it the way I like things, which is more savory. So no, I like savory oatmeal too. So it's weird.
I
It's
have
fine.
that is that's hilarious. You need to write that recipe down and the
I do.
story as to why you are the only person who eats savory oatmeal.
The only one in the world, that's it. Just wipe the slate, I'm the only one.
Like, you might be onto something. It's kinda like the bacon on the peanut butter sandwich that people are like, "It's weird, but it's actually very good." And you think, "No, thank you," and then you do it, and you're like, it's weird, but it's actually very good." Maybe that's your savory oatmeal.
It is. I'll make it for everyone. It's really
Yeah.
There
great.
you go.
So I loved what you said earlier about the recipes that were on your guys' blog. And just you said that they're not, recipes that were professionally created or made in some professional kitchen. They're just the recipes from the people who enter their recipes into your website. And it made me kind of like you saying that made me think about a couple years ago with Plan to Eat during the holidays. We did like a cookie exchange, a virtual cookie exchange. And so our customers sent us their cookie recipes. We put them into an account on the website so people could connect with them. And there are so many cookie recipes in that account that have basically zero instruction. Like it's just the old way of, like your grandma or your great grandma, they just knew how to make the recipe. They didn't need the directions. And so, like, literally the directions would be like, mix the ingredients, bake for 8 minutes. You're like, "Oh, okay." And so I could
Like,
just imagine there are quite a few recipes like that you guys have too, that it's just there was this old knowledge about cooking and baking that, they didn't need a recipe that had 15 different steps. They just knew how to do everything.
that is so true, and you can I'm gonna say this, and I can't, like, back it up with any true facts, but I swear you could date a recipe based off the number of directions in the recipe, because you're right, there's something to, older recipes and let's just be honest, most of the time the cooking was done by women, and this knowledge was just passed down, and they knew, like, you mix the wet ingredients first, and then you add the dry, like, I didn't even know that. So it's interesting because sometimes, I'm all for, like, leaving it exactly how grandma wrote it until grandma didn't write anything, and then I'm like, "Okay, parentheses, here's how all of us who are oblivious and brand new to the kitchen, here's how we make it." Because you're right, it'll just be a list of ingredients. They'll be like, mix well, bake at 350. You're like, oh, if anyone's ever seen the Great British Baking Show where they give them like the list of directions and they purposely leave out like half of them, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, and go. And so it is interesting. We do have to like write into when someone submits one, we have to say we do have to ask questions often. It's like, hey, and it's okay because they're not professionally trained and they don't even realize it. They're like, yeah, that's just how you do it. And it's like, well, I didn't know that, neither will anyone else.
Mm.
But, so it's like, "Hey, exactly what order would you like these ingredients in?" Or things like that. And then it's really interesting. You can always tell you guys understand this. I don't. Uh, I get tickled to death. When someone's from Colorado because there's the high altitude instructions. Or it'll
Yeah.
be like, "This is for high altitude only." Like, they don't provide it to anyone else. Like, that's a very small subsection of people who can use this.
It's not though. It's not a small substitute. This really just backs up the importance of preserving family recipes, I think, because everything we're talking about feels like a lost art in some
Mm.
ways. And if we don't write these recipes down, we've everything's gotten convenient and everything has gotten pre-done for us. And I think that there's this element of like, we have to write them down. We have to pass them down. Or this special way of cooking that our ancestors did. We're going to lose it. And I think we've lost it in some ways. And I think that it's something that kind of comes up on the podcast a lot when we talk to people. Buying a whole chicken and processing it yourself. Your grandma probably had a chicken in her yard and she got it and processed the whole process.
Right.
But when I get a chicken, I'm always thinking, maybe I should call my mom and just ask her for some tips. That's a little bit of a joke because I've learned a lot, but I still call my mom all the time to ask her how to do something. Or, one of my grandmother's, the pound cake I was talking about, the original recipe for the frosting calls for oleo.
Mhm.
And I love the recipe. It's in my grandmother's handwriting. It's beautiful. And I know now that that's butter. But I used to have to call my mom and be like, remind me, what's this? What is this ingredient?
not
Go ahead.
only is it important to write them down, but I think it's important to create these dishes.
Oh, yeah.
Because the first step is, writing it down and having it.
Mhm.
But like you said, like there is something to recreating these dishes and celebrating them. And I mean, I will purposely call my mom rather you could probably Google your way through anything, but there's
Mhm.
something great of being able to pick up the phone and call your mom and say like, "Mom, what is this?" And it starts this conversation, and it's like a great way to connect.
Yeah.
Mm.
We love to connect over food, especially, you and I are talking, we're both originally from Alabama. We both live in states that are very different now. And so just because of the way the world is, like we're further apart. And so it's really great when you get to reconnect and talk on the phone and talk about these things. And it's I've come to realize it's such a common theme for recipes to be something that just keeps bringing us back together.
Yeah.
When you grew up in the South, you had Sunday dinner, you were always at the table. We don't have that anymore, but I catch myself on the phone with my mom on Sundays often when I'm recreating a meal. And so, in some weird way, a recipe has yet again brought the family back to the dinner table, whether it be virtually, whether it be in that presence. And so, it's kind of a magical thing. And it's magical. And then we get to talk about grandmother, our great grandmother, all those things. So, it's beautiful.
I love that. That makes me this year I was in charge of making our pumpkin pie. We have pumpkin pie, not pecan pie. I almost said pecan. Okay, I'm really sorry. Anyways, I was in charge of making the pumpkin pie and, I was following the directions for the recipe that I had, but I still called my mom to be like, "But wait, mom, do you do it differently than this?" Because sometimes even if your mom gives you her recipe or grandma's recipe or whatever, there's still sometimes where they're like, "Yeah, well, it's written down that way, but we don't do it like that." So I don't know why, but I do love that you brought that up, that it is recipes and food are just a great chance, even if you're not in person with the people who, like brought you these recipes, that there's still a great opportunity to reconnect and an excuse to pick up the phone. Cause I think often we just, our lives get busy and we let things go. So I love
It
that.
is, I agree. I love that you made the pumpkin pie. I love that. And I love that you called your mom, like, I'm sure she loved that, and yeah, like, it is so great, and it will you're good. Recipes allow us to relive things. I remember during COVID, we
Yeah.
were in Atlanta, and Mobile has Mardi Gras, that's a big thing, we'd always go home for Mardi Gras, and I just had my first daughter, and I was devastated that we weren't getting to go home for Mardi Gras. It felt very unnatural.
Mm.
And my daughter had not met anyone, like, she met the grandparents, and that was it. And so I do remember my best friend sent up, king cake, and my husband made jambalaya, and my daughter was 9 months at the time, and so she was getting to eat solids, and, I remember feeding it to her, and I remember crying. I remember I was so
Mm.
overwhelmed with emotion because although I wasn't where I felt like I should have been, although, these just life kinda happened and we weren't getting to do what I wanted to, I was getting to share that with her. I was getting to keep that spirit of Mardi Gras alive in a different city. It was great. It was great to chat with family, and then, like, next thing you know, we're on the phone with everyone. Now you have FaceTime, which is fabulous. It was like, "Look, it's Anne Marie, and she's eating her first bite of jambalaya." And of course, you, like, end up FaceTiming every single person. This kid's like, "This is not my first bite." Like, you've been called 20 people.
Oh, it's too good.
Yes.
Man, I feel like a broken record. I say this a lot too, but it's just food has this way of just taking you back to a place, and it just brings up so much nostalgia and feelings, and, I mean, when you were just talking right then, I just like you could just it brings up so much emotion in me, to just think about, I mean, just going back to the pound cake, like, when I get to make that again or have that again, it takes me right back to my grandmother's kitchen in the house that I basically grew up in,
Right.
and even if it doesn't taste exactly the same, my mind goes right there because
Mm,
that's just it feels like home, and food has kind of this way of bringing us back to that, which is really unique.
it is. I think it's the smells. Like, it's something to do with all those ingredients that it gets you, and, the older you get, I think you get almost choked up when you have a meal that feels nostalgic. Like, that first
Mm.
bite, you get so overwhelmed with the emotion that it's sad, but you definitely have, like, it takes you back in a way that you weren't expecting sometimes. It has a way of catching you at a different moment each time, and you're just brought back, which is great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we don't want to take up your whole day, Christina, but we appreciate you being here.
Of
Why don't
course.
you tell everybody where they can connect with Create My Cookbook?
Absolutely. Accounts are free to create. Just create a cookbook at createmycookbook.com. If you have any questions, you can reach out to support at createmycookbook.com. We'll be happy to answer them.
Wonderful. We also like to end our episodes talking a little bit more about recipes, even though we talked a little bit about it already. But we like to talk about a recent recipe or recent meal that you've had that you really loved and you want to talk about and share with our audience.
Ooh, okay. We've already talked about pecan pie, which is on my mind because I have all the ingredients on my counter in there. And we talked about the all my favorite ones I feel like I've talked about. Let me think about this. Okay. No, I have it. I have it. So, man, they're all about baking right now. It's just that season.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely one of my favorite recipes right now is a macadamia nut cookie that is just heavenly and also really fun to make with my daughter. So it's not a recipe that was actually passed down to me. It's one that I've just like researched, but it's kind of become my own. And what's really fun about it is just it's kind of the first recipe that I'm making with my daughter that's ours. And she and I are making this recipe. We've made it like 3 times in the last month. And it's just fun because I feel like it's our memory and it's something that she and I are connecting. And I feel like I get to be the mom now. And I get to be the mom in the author line. And so
Yeah.
I'm really
Oh.
loving that recipe.
Well, that's beautiful. I love that. That makes me really happy that you guys are getting to share that memory.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. We've loved having you on the show, and we cannot wait to share Create My Cookbook with our audience and just share this fun, nostalgic chat about recipes with them.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please share it with someone and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.